Okay, here we are, part two of the most mesmerizing story of a crusade that we're all on, regardless of what you think of Hauptmann or Lindbergh, it doesn't matter. We need the truth, and it's supposed to be transparency that allows us to examine the evidence that put a man in the electric chair long ago. Kurt is going to continue with his story. I happen to know that the ceiling, people told me the ceiling was leaking and they put a garbage pail. And I did call and talk to the new archivist, and he himself could never he was unable to reassure me when the place would be open again. So that was at least a year and a half ago. Go ahead.
Yep. Yeah. So, what we know for a fact is that
Wait,
sometime,
start with the men again when you walked in to take the photographs because you had
sure,
a process.
sure. So, yeah. So, I had my hearing on January 5th, 2023, and I lost it, and then I appealed it. And so, as part of the appeal, I wanted to put into the appellate documents pictures of all of the stamps and envelopes that I wanted to use as part of that exhibit. Of course, my client was completely in the know and had full access to all of those pictures in real time. Um, and so when I was physically present there, there was a big missing ceiling tile in the ceiling. So I said to about 12 armed New Jersey State Police who were there watching my every movement, well, isn't that interesting? You guys had a whole year to fix this leak in the ceiling, and you didn't even fix that tile yet that's been missing. I proceeded to leave the table where there were multiple armed guards surrounding me and started walking over towards that hole with my phone to take pictures. And I was instructed to stop taking pictures of that hole. And it was already too late because I'd already taken a couple of them and I have them. And they're going to be used in my new case. Um, what was fascinating to me was that the year earlier, when they had this water leak in the New Jersey State Police Museum directly over the Lindbergh archives, they didn't even move the archives underneath the water leak. Instead of moving any of the pieces of paper, any of the Hollinger boxes, anything there, all they did was put a garbage can directly under the leak with a garbage bag inside of it to collect water. I have all those images showing the water collecting there and all of the archives underneath the water not even being moved out of the way. So
So,
it's really frightening for me to think that all this time, energy, effort, cost to the New Jersey taxpayer to pay for a full-time archivist, um, all to protect and keep and preserve for generations these documents. They didn't even think to move them, and Mother Nature could destroy them for the rest of eternity. Um, it was really sad for me, honestly, and that was shortly after Mark Falzini had retired from the museum, is when the leak happened. And the fact that they didn't even fix the ceiling tile where the leak was a whole year later, to me told me everything that I really needed to know about how valuable these documents really are to the New Jersey State Police, um, which even motivates me more. It's honestly just sad. It's sad to me that um, they think so little of these documents, and yet they won't allow justice to be served by finding out who was involved in sending these ransom notes, which are by far and away the most tangible historical things in those archives.
but
Which
it's in
I
a
was
safe. I remember Mom putting
correct,
them in a safe. So they,
correct.
if the leak had destroyed the papers in the file cabinets, they're in plastic boxes. What
That's
do you call
exactly right.
those? There's a name for those
Yes,
files, the gray
they're
files.
exactly, and they're not laminated, but they're in laminated sheets. They're definitely well protected inside the safe. Um, Interestingly enough, the envelopes aren't. the ransom envelopes, which have DNA, are not in the safe.
Why? They were
They're
in the safe when he took them out to show me.
they're in a Hollinger box that are adjacent to where the library collection was. I saw where they were being taken from and removed from. Hopefully they changed that because of this case, and hopefully they're being well guarded and well protected. Um, and maybe it's because there's a different archivist who's handling things differently than Mark. I don't know Greg Ferrara. I'm not going to judge him. I hope that I become friends with him over the course of time because he knew exactly what job he was signing up for when he signed up to work there, and he knew that this was the most important aspect of his job there. So what really bothers me right now, amongst many things, is these documents can be destroyed by a leak in a roof potentially, and yet they won't even allow us to test them with all of the modern equipment that we have right now, which could easily trace whether or not there's anything of forensic value on those pieces of paper right now. So as I've gone through this journey, it really has been like you. It's been a passion. It's been all-consuming at times. I lost my mother in October of 2023. And so that was right after I filed. That was right as things were going on during the appellate process. And she was ill for many years and, in and out of the hospital, hospice, doctor's office, rehab, you name it. And she wanted to pass away in her house, in the house that I grew up in. And she wanted to pass away in the living room where we always had our family holidays, and a very nice area. Directly behind the bed that she passed away on was all of our family pictures that she probably hung on the walls in about 1979 or 1980. So I have an older brother and a younger sister, and her and my father were right there. So I'm going to share my screen for a minute because, oh, you have to turn on screen sharing. It
I
says
do.
send, yeah.
Allow requesting. Oh, I'm glad you know how to do this. Go ahead.
All right. So this is baby me, probably from about 1980, and my little Bugs Bunny overalls there. And while all this was going on,
I don't see
this,
a picture. Did you put it up yet?
oh, you don't see the screen share?
No.
All right, hold on.
I saw your
Let me
request
try
and I
again.
said allow
Okay.
there,
All right, there we
but
go.
I
So
don't see the picture. Oh,
how
there.
about
Oh,
all right. So that's baby me right there with my little Bugs Bunny overalls and my little horse there. And these are the words that my mom chose to say for me in about 1980. Able to counsel. So
right.
just starting with that alone, I find it really fascinating that I ended up becoming a lawyer and a counselor and have now been for the majority of my life already, almost. Um, Learn to do good, seek justice, correct oppression, defend the fatherless, plead for the widow.
Yeah.
So, in the context of this case and how this case has impacted my life, and as you can imagine, I was spending a significant amount of time with my mother in the last several months of her life, and I held her hand at the very, very end, directly next to these words right here.
Mm.
Um, I couldn't help but think about
What?
Anna Houtman and Manfred Houtman and seeking justice and correcting oppression
Right.
and trying to do good. And I physically met Manfred Houtman twice.
You
I
did?
drove I did. I drove to his house two times in 2023. He spoke to me for about 3 to 5 minutes. And I just felt really, really sad for the man that he's lived his whole life.
Right.
He's never changed his name. He's a spitting image of his father. And
Wow.
he's now 93, I believe, either 92 or 93. And when I met him a couple years ago, I didn't take him for a day older than 68 or 69. He's in
Wow.
great physical shape. He has his father's face. Um, and
Wow.
it really has these words in some weird sort of spiritual way, um, are really fascinating to me, and how I've been linked to this case for so long in that context. Um,
I had no idea anybody had ever, because he slams the door in your face if you approach him about this. What
so
did you
he
do?
was
What is your magic touch? How did you get him to?
so he was in the Army, and at the time I was at the Army War College in Carlisle, Pennsylvania, and I was driving back and forth between Carlisle, Pennsylvania, and my home in Pennington, New Jersey, weekly. And he lives almost the exact halfway point between Carlisle, Pennsylvania, and Pennington, New Jersey, right off of exit 298 of the Pennsylvania Turnpike. And I was wearing my Army uniform, and
Okay.
I brought him a bag of gifts from the Army War College. I gave him a hat from the Army War College, a letter opener from the Army War College,
Oh,
some other nice things from there, a mug, and yeah, it made me feel really sad that every time people like me try to talk to him, it definitely bothers him and hurts him and brings up memories that he does not want to be part of. Um, so while I told him and I gave him my word, I will not bother him again, because between 2010 or maybe 2008 and when I visited him twice in 2023, I either wrote him a letter or called him at least 2 to 4 times a year, for about those 13, 14, 15 years. I got him on the phone several times. I spoke to him several times. Almost all of them ended up with him hanging up the phone on me. And I
oh,
decided that I'm going to give this another shot. Um, he asked me very politely, please don't write me anymore. Don't buy me any more gifts. Please don't speak to me. And in my whole car ride home, it really resonated with me that this is a very painful thing for him, and he does not want to be involved. So um, I would love if this case wins, and if his father's DNA are not on these ransom envelopes, to break my promise and to show him that his father did not send these letters. Um, I don't know how that would go. I don't know if that would make him feel good or not, but I would love to break my promise, and I would do that. Um,
you don't
but
think, let me interject here because
please,
it's been a theory of mine all along. Because I've known not to go near him or try. I've known he lives in Amish area of Pennsylvania. But don't you think a case could be made theoretically that you're asking the question, why are you so concerned? This is 2025. The case happened so long ago. Won't they owe him as a lawyer? Can you tell me the answer to this? Won't they owe him a bundle of billions or
they
trillion?
would.
How much will the state of New Jersey have to cough up to
We would pick up his mom's lawsuit for wrongful death.
and that was only a few million she was asking for, wasn't it? 40
We
million, it would
if
be
if
a,
if if his father was wrongfully executed, which this could lead to some potentially conclusive proof of that, then I would directly ask him if he would be interested in that.
but if he has no children, and I believe he has none, I'm not sure if his wife is still alive, that would be the end of any lawsuit, wouldn't it? I mean, maybe
No, not at all. If he's still
Hauptman's
alive,
sister. No,
if he
but I'm saying after he dies and he's in his he's 92. I mean, I hope he lives to 120,
sure, so
but
same.
um but the state of I'm thinking maybe from their perspective that's the answer that you're looking for.
Yeah,
Why do you
it,
care so much about this case?
yeah. It
No.
would be nice if that was part of it. I just don't think there's enough people there that know the facts of the case enough. I don't think there's enough people there that even know if Hauptmann had a son or had
Why
offspring
are
at
they
all.
stonewalling you like they are, or like they've been doing to everyone? Why? There's got to be some
There, I don't
political
believe
reason.
I don't believe there's a secret black book passed down to
Right,
superintendent to
right,
superintendent.
right.
I don't believe
I
there's
don't.
some definitive knowledge that we did things incorrectly. I think more it's almost like when I was a student at the College of William and Mary, Unsolved Mysteries wanted to come and do a full program, a 1 hour program in Colonial Williamsburg to do the ghosts of Colonial Williamsburg. And I
Okay.
was 19, 20 years old, and the Colonial Williamsburg Foundation said no. And then I questioned. I said, I don't understand. I'm giving tour guides here and teaching people about the history of where George Wythe lived and where Thomas Jefferson stood when this happened. Why would that be a no? We don't want to know the answer. Like, why, we don't want to know if this house is haunted. Like, why would we want to actually know that for real? Because it generates tourism, it generates capital, it generates money. This is not generating capital, money, revenue, income for the state of New Jersey on any level. I just don't think there's any interest or desire for the people that work there to know. And I think that at this point, because they know I'm not going anywhere, they know you're not going anywhere, they know others aren't going anywhere. Now it's like an act of stubbornness. Like we are going to defy any of these people who think they know better than us or they know how justice should be pursued. We're the New Jersey State Police. We're going to do it our way. Um, they have a really bad legacy of leadership from the top going on, which is very well publicized. They have active lawsuits from members within their own ranks, preventing minorities, African Americans, from getting promoted to upper echelons.
Mhm.
They have some very interesting challenges in their top leadership. And that doesn't answer the question of the why, but I think the point from their perspective, they get nothing at all from whether or not it's Houtman's, Jafsey's, um, uh, anybody in the house's DNA, Violet Sharp's DNA. They don't gain anything by knowing any of that stuff.
No, but that is a blemish on the history of their police department, even if it's 100 years ago. Uh, I've never seen. I do a lot of reading about history and international relations. As far as I know, there was only one governor, and his name was Ryan up there in Chicago, who was in trouble himself, who put what do you call it, a mandate against capital punishment in his state, because what I'm trying to say is I've never known a mayor, a governor, any official, a senator, a politician who will condemn the police of their own state. They cannot do it, even if it's a small village and the mayor of a small town, whatever it is. They can never, and even in the federal level, the president can never condemn police activities that are wrongful or despicable, whatever. And Governor Ryan, I remember this was like 25, 30 years ago, he put a moratorium on the capital punishment in his state of Illinois because it turned out the cops were framing a lot of people who were they were on death
Mm,
row. And the governor was in trouble himself. And I don't remember the outcome of it, but I remember saying to myself, where has there ever been a governor, a senator, a mayor that's ever condemned? And look what happened to Harold Hoffman. And this is my point. Hoffman's life was completely ruined, not just
yeah,
his political career, because he had integrity and he was doing exactly that. He was, without
sure,
actually saying it in the press, but he was doubting the veracity and doubting the integrity, doubting the police of his own state, and that ruined him. And no governor, no, and that's all I'm saying. So if you're we're all wondering, what are they hiding? What do they know that they can't be knowing anything 100 years later? They don't know any more than we probably know more than they do. And
And
yet
it
they're
makes it
frightened
worse.
of us.
And it
Yeah.
makes it worse if they just don't care. Doesn't that just make it worse for you? If they just really don't
I think they
care,
do care. They care about
okay,
what I'm talking, what, because I see everything politically.
okay.
This is the way I am. I interpret things uh, through international relations problems and domestic problems, and I've become aware of a lot of CIA operations. I mean, who hasn't? There are a million books on that situation. What I'm
So
saying
what's the
is there were
political lens then here?
right. So what is I ask myself, and why? Well, you just have to look at what they did to Harold Hoffman.
Okay, but that was what, 85 years ago, right?
Right.
They know that I intend on running for political office in the
Oh,
future. They know that I am not going to stop fighting, and they know this isn't going away. So um, if I lose case two, there's going to be a case three, and it's going to be stronger than case two. Case two is not going to lose though, so I'm not really worried about that. And again, just to remind everybody, it will be filed next Friday, April 25th. And if you're interested in signing up for the petition, you could email me at kurt.perhach@gmail.com if you're interested. They know that we're not going to stop. They know you're not going to stop. And that's why I think that this is like an act of defiance of
yeah. Yeah, yeah.
why should we let the
Yeah.
public
It's
storm
us
into
and
our
them.
museum?
They
Yes,
see it
yes,
us and them,
yes.
like it's like they're not part of us. They're not
Exactly.
part of us.
And there was fascinating language in the judge's order, which was written the exact same day as the hearing on January 5th, 2023, which said members of the public do not have the right to march into the Smithsonian and ask government officials to do DNA testing inside of the Smithsonian. My counter argument to that, which I thought was a really good one, and I've actually now thought about how I could have done it much better since this time, was, Judge, this is not the Smithsonian. You are completely comparing apples and oranges.
Right.
These documents are not being kept in a humidified room that's going to preserve them for hundreds and hundreds of years. There's a water that leaks in there. The room, they try to moderate the temperature of the room. The room fluctuates in temperature between 66 and 77 degrees in there. This is paper that will deteriorate and continue to deteriorate every hour, every day that we don't do testing of this stuff. And at a certain point, it's just not going to be there. So that was a very frustrating argument for me because we weren't talking about Egyptian mummies that are on display for everybody to see and keep for another thousands of years. We're talking about boxes of pieces of paper that will deteriorate and corrode, and they already look nothing like they did in their original condition in between 1932 and the trial of 1935, and then the appeal later on that year. They are in bad shape. Many of them are, and yet there are perfectly clear-cut adhesive pieces of paper stuck to stamps and envelopes that Bruno Richard Hauptmann sent to Mrs. Begg, known as the Begg letter. There are other very clear pieces of paper there that have adhesive stuck to them, which I believe would still have saliva on them.
Right.
And the clock is ticking in order to allow that to happen. And the idea that the Open Public Records Act um, exists to link Executive Order 110, not only because the timing of the wrongful death suit of Anna Hauptmann, but because the governor believed that we didn't do anything wrong. That idea is under the Open Public Records Act. In order to not grant Open Public Records Act to the public, there has to be an exception to the rule.
Right.
And they have all these exceptions. Not a single one of those exceptions applies to the Lindbergh case.
What kind
And
of exceptions could they have?
it's an open matter, right? So George Floyd got killed, and members of the public want to see all the police personnel records of the cop who killed George Floyd. That was an open matter before he was convicted, and it was a closed matter. It could cause
Oh,
reputational harm to people involved in the case.
Mm.
Everybody in this case is long since deceased.
Right.
There's no
No
reputational
harm.
no
Right.
harm involved here. So there's lots of those types of exceptions that you would
Okay.
imagine. Not a single one of them applies in this particular case. And because there's no exception, and because the governor tailored and mirrored his language to that, um, the state of New Jersey has no counter to not allow it to happen. And so all they're relying on is you're going to damage or destroy these historical documents, which are stuck in boxes, which, by the way, since last March, I don't know if your listeners know this or not, I think they do, you can't go into that archive anymore. And
Right.
since the New York Times article came out last March, it's been shut down completely. And the logic and rational explanation of why it's been shut down
There's
is
none.
well,
Oh, there is. They
there
didn't.
is one. Yeah, they're actually relying on the language of the last paragraph of Executive Order 110. So the last paragraph of Executive Order 110 grants permission for the superintendent of the New Jersey State Police to implement a standard operating procedure of how he's going to allow members of the public to go into the archives, to include during normal business hours of 9 to 3, and take a guess at what happened between 1981 when that was signed and March of 2024 before the New York Times article.
What do you mean? What happened?
They didn't have an SOP. They never had anything in writing. So now
Oh, it was never.
they're saying that we are actually allowed to prevent members from the public for going in there because the last paragraph gives permission to the superintendent to grant procedures on how we're going to recognize requests to come and look at the archives and copy, examine, and inspect these archives.
And it
Um,
wasn't designated. It wasn't put in writing.
it
Or they
wasn't put
never
in
wrote.
writing.
They
They,
never.
they never wrote it for over 42 years. They have not written it now in 13 months since they turned back the first writer who
Oh,
wanted to
I
go in there to
see.
do research. So they're now relying on that language to say we have permission not to allow members of the public to
Oh,
go in there because of this last paragraph. And
wow.
and it's really a sad a sad excuse because how long does it actually take to write a 2, 3, 4 page paragraph?
Right. What about the argument I made the other night in the video about the Lindberghs having gotten these historical artifacts? Why did there was no argument given to those people? Why can't you bring that up as a comparison?
I can. I definitely can. I think the strongest legal argument is connecting the logical dots of Executive Order 110 with the Open Public Records Act, and applying what the words examination and inspection mean in 2025. So I think that argument is stronger, but I could absolutely include that into this new case too.
And I don't want to bring the word up. It starts with L and ends in R. Ladder. How, please
Yeah,
tell
yeah,
me, what is the
yeah,
problem with two tooth splinters? You know how big the ladder is. It would
yeah,
take a minuscule splinter from each. That's
yeah.
another thing because it's got DNA potential and
Right. So open public records acts across the country really apply to documents. They really don't apply to um,
oh,
tangible things. So here, let me share my screen again so that
that's minutes.
your
Don't
viewers
believe
can
how
see
fast.
what we're talking about here. Um, all right, can you see the screen?
Yeah.
All right, so this is Executive Order 110, and on the third page of 3, we can clearly see that it is signed on the 9th day of October, 1981, the
Mm,
exact same week when Anna Houtman filed her wrongful death
right.
lawsuit against the state of New Jersey. This paragraph right here is why you were able to go in there as many times as you were able to go in there, and why you were able to meet Mark Falzini, the
Right.
superintendent of the state police, to make investigative files, records, and exhibits within his custody relating to the investigation of the Lindbergh kidnapping available to the public and subject to inspection and examination and available for copying 45 days from the promulgation of this order. This grants members of the public to examination and inspection of every single piece of paper in that museum and every single document in that museum. And in fact, to your point of the L word, which ends in an R, we could even argue over the course of time, if we're successful on case 2, that this also applies to the tangible ladder too. I don't want to go there right now because
Right.
I want to win the easier one first.
Right.
They are denying everybody right now access based on this paragraph. The superintendent is empowered in accordance with the Open Public Records Act to establish procedures to ensure that there is no risk of damage or mutilation of such files, records, and exhibits, and to ensure that public access and right to copy such files, records, and exhibits shall be during regular course of. So really, they're relying on these couple words right here, that the superintendent has a right to establish procedures to ensure there is no risk of damage or mutilation of anything in that museum. So now they're saying that we don't have procedures in place. So sorry, you can't come and visit.
Mhm.
That was 13 months ago is when they told the first journalist that I became aware of that they were denied access. Then a week after I was first told of that, one of my current plaintiffs tried to go in there, who's a retired New Jersey school teacher who lives in Hopewell, and she was told, sorry, you can't access this here.
Mm.
So they're relying on the fact that they don't have procedures to now deny the executive
Right.
order. And first of all, how long does it take to write a couple pages for a procedure? Secondly, they're relying on these words, no risk of damage or mutilation. Okay.
Right.
They
So
are
then
risking and damaging these documents
with the ceiling and the
with the
water,
water
right,
and with letting them sit and rot in a
in a
room that's not
moldy,
controlled, in the
right,
moldy,
right,
gross
right.
room that's a state building. They're not protecting these things indefinitely on any level. They are currently being damaged. They are currently being mutilated, and that's what they're arguing right now.
And
So
you are
my
the savior of the viability of these documents. You would be saving them from harm, possible harm, and they're making the other. Oh, we just lost the.
Yeah, I stopped sharing.
Oh, you stopped
But
sharing because
yeah.
stop record. I have to stop the recording.